Where am I?
Of all the questions you could ask, is that really the most important?
Who's there? Show yourself!
Not very polite to answer a question with another question.
A gentleman of integrity would show his face were he to make a proper argument.
Your point is fair, and were you a man of observation, you would have already seen me.
Face to face you show honor, yet you have still not answered my question.
A question with nothing to be gained at its resolution has no point in being asked.
So what question should I ask?
Can you trust him?
And whose virtue am I questioning?
Take a moment and reflect. You chose to rescue someone you knew nothing about.
Beatrice.
Will his promise be kept? Can he return you home?
He gave his word. As of right now, what choice do I have?
You're going to trust the word of a man who killed his sons?
He's no murderer. Their punishment was a result of their conduct.
Conduct is a result of upbringing. Atreus neglected his sons in favor of his projects.
He was one man, trying to make a future for his family.
Had he raised them properly, they may still live. Or is ambition more important than flesh and blood?
In the end, evil is not inherited. They made their choices.
By the logic of choices, it would appear then that you are responsible for their deaths.
What? That's absurd!
You opened the book. You brought him the page.
No.
You set him free. Their blood is on your hands. Your choices led to their death. You killed them. It's all your fault.
No. No. Their punishment was earned! If you were to blame anyone, it's his fault!
So it has come full circle. Now you see my point. How can you trust a man whose faults led him to kill his own sons?
Who are you? The only one you can trust. Nightmares plagued my dreams each night. In our brief conversations, Atreus had promised that he would find a way that would allow me to return home safely. As each day passed, however, I slowly started to doubt that that would ever come to fruition. That is, until today. Approximately 1 month since I first came to Myst. As I returned to my living quarters after a long walk, I found Atreus had left a note in my absence. He asks I return to Kavir. The time has come to assist in rescuing his wife, Catherine, and if his understandings are correct, a way home may be revealed.
Hey everyone, Necrovaria is back with Myst Explained Part 2, the story of Riven. Now, before I start, I want to say that this is a lore video, and it's a deep dive, a complete explanation of Riven, if you will. And I realize that after writing this, that it's very long and very in-depth. So to help, I will try to remember to include some timestamps for easy navigation. That being said, let's begin. 4 years after the first release of Myst, Cyan released the sequel known as Riven. It picks up after the first game with Atreus seeking the stranger's assistance as requested previously. If you haven't watched my previous 2 videos explaining the Book of Atreus as well as the game of Myst, you might want to, because it will help make sense of this game. Also, this video is an explanation into the lore, so as before, there will be spoilers. The game starts us in Kavir. We play as the stranger once again. Atreus is seated at his desk writing in a large book, and is relieved to see that you have returned to him. He takes a moment to finish his writing, signaling you to wait a moment with one finger. As he finishes, he begins to explain the situation.
Here. Most of what you'll need to know is in there. well hidden. For all reasons you'll discover, I can't send you to Riven with a way out. But I can give you this. It appears to be a linking book, back here to Dunny. But it's actually a one-man prison. You'll need it, I'm afraid, to capture Gehn. Once you've found Catherine, signal me, and I'll come with a linking book to bring us back.
After giving you a journal he had previously written and a prison book, he goes back to finishing the last entry written in the large book. Once complete, he opens to the first page and examines it for a moment. Before we embark on our journey, Atris explains that there might be a chance to return us back to the place we came from, as long as all goes according to plan. He then turns the book towards us, revealing a static and fragmented linking panel. Something is clearly not right, but we trust Atris. We place our hand on the panel and link to the Age of Riven for the first time. Before I can continue with what happens next, we need to talk a little bit about the Age of Riven itself. From the Book of Atris, we know that Gehn is Atris' father. He is also the creator of Riven, or Fifth Age, as he so aptly named it. Gehn wrote Riven by piecing together fragments of writings from pre-existing books. He noted that the number 5 had significance in Dunny culture, and that element was found everywhere within this age, due to the writings used. This evidence was speculated to prove that ages were indeed created by writings, rather than being pre-existing ages to which the writings linked to. Originally, Riven was one large island, as we will talk about a bit later. Due to its instability, the large island split into 5 separate, smaller islands. As of now, it is unknown what Riven looked like before. However, if we piece together what we see later in the game, it gives us a faint idea of what things may have looked like. When creating Riven, Gehn wrote into the age all of the materials he would need in the making of more linking books. We can speculate that he did this with almost every age he created, as his main goal was to build a society in which he was their god. We see evidence of these resources as we explore Riven, such as the remains of the great tree that was once used to create paper seen on the prison island. We also see scarab beetles, which were used for ink on the jungle island. We will touch on each island a little bit later. Due to Gehn's lack of knowledge and the scarcity of words in his description, Riven had many inherent flaws, and like all of his ages, was on a steady decline of instability. Due to these mistakes, Riven was doomed from the start. However, after Gehn was exiled to Riven, Atris attempted to make some corrections to the descriptive book, which did put a temporary pause on the state of its decline. Eventually, though, they failed as well, and Riven was once again in peril. Once again returning to the Book of Atris, we know that Gehn has a god complex and is tyrannical in nature. He has destroyed countless ages as well as the civilizations within them. Atris saw this, and with the help of Catherine, he set in motion a trap to stop Gehn once and for all. His plan was simple. Firstly, he would write changes to Riven to help counter the instabilities. Then, he would remove all but one of Gehn's hidden linking books found amongst Riven. He would use this last one to link away while holding it over a fire so that when it fell, it would burn up, leaving Gehn in exile. We know that this had not gone exactly as planned, but thankfully, Catherine, with the help of Anna, had worked on a backup plan of their own. When the ground started to shake and the large Rivenese daggers fell from the sky, causing fissures to open around Riven, Catherine revealed that she held 2 linking books. She throws one of the books into the closest fissure that had opened, and it is destroyed immediately due to the immense heat emanating from it. The second, she throws high into the air in an arc to allow time for both her and Atris to escape. Gehn dives for the second book, but cannot reach it fast enough. It too falls into a fissure and is destroyed. As Catherine and Atris are running away, Catherine reveals a third book from her bag, the Book of Myst. Eventually, they come across a large fissure that is different from the rest. Instead of glowing red from the heat below, this one glows blue, and upon inspection reveals a large array of stars in space. Gehn catches up as Catherine links away to Myst, and Atris follows by jumping into the fissure and linking so that the book falls into the abyss, trapping Gehn on Riven. This betrayal of Gehn was seen by 2 Rivenese people at the star fissure, which caused a split amongst the civilization. One group stayed loyal to Gehn, more than likely due to their fear of his power, and the other group saw that Gehn was not a god at all, and that Atris and Catherine had defeated him by trapping him there. This group came to be known as the Black Moiety, although they are commonly referred to just as the Moiety. More on them later. After Gehn became stranded on Riven, he immediately began to study the star fissure. His goal was to determine the feasibility of navigating the stars beneath, and possibly acquiring the Myst linking book that Atris let fall. He used people, alleged criminals, and threw them into this fissure so that he could observe their fate. The people he threw in would not die in the fissure, and Gehn was not able to determine where they would end up. Eventually, he had the fissure sealed with heavy iron, and a viewport was added as well as a crude telescope over it, so that he could continue to observe the fissure. With the resources readily available to continue making books, he ordered the Rivenese people who remained loyal to work. They would harvest the trees and scarabs and process them into paper and ink. He expended great effort creating cortinia, or blank books used to create linking books. Due to the strict specifications that books had to have in order to work properly for links, Gehn was not able to make a book that would fully work. He blamed it on the impure wood of Riven, so he engineered large domes around Riven to fix the flaws in the book by mechanical means. He found out that if enough energy was used, the links in the book would become stable enough to use. The large amount of energy needed was too great a demand to be met by normal means. This put his project on hold for some time. That is, until Gehn found out that fire marbles could be used to power his project. To harness that power, he built the Great Golden Dome on the Temple Island, with a large boiler system powered by the fire marbles at the top. When the marbles were placed in the correct spots and the mechanism closed, the marbles would release their energy, and the books within the smaller domes would come to life. Using this power, Gehn was able to link to his newest age, known as Age 233. Of course, this was kept secret from everyone, save a few Rivenese who were brought there to build his office, and was locked away behind multiple levels of security to keep anyone but him out. We'll come back to Age 233 a little bit later. Now that that's all covered, we can continue with our journey on Riven. Alright, back to the game. Our task is simple, or at least it seems simple, until we arrive on Riven and come to the realization that Gehn was expecting us. As we take our first breath of Riven air, we trigger a pressure plate in the ground, which closes the door to a small prison cell built at the linking point. Gehn had expected Atris to return someday, and he wanted to be ready for it. As the bars close, a guard approaches. He is cautious as he approaches, and speaks in Rivenese as well as a broken phrase in Dunny. As a side note, the guard's real name is not known, but due to his first words, many refer to him as Cho, so we're going to call him that. Since the stranger does not speak either language, we are helpless to respond. We learn from the wiki that the broken Dunny spoken by Cho can be translated to "give me the book." We wrestle for control, but in the end, Cho takes the book from us. Luckily, a member of the Moiety is close by and shoots Cho with a dart that knocks him unconscious, taking the trap book from him. The Moiety then drags Cho away and throws him over the side of the cliff. Once done, they release the cage mechanism for us, and using a small Rivenese dagger, which we'll talk about a little bit later, seizes the lever in place so that the cage is rendered useless. The Moiety agent runs away with no hope of catching up. So now, here we are, stuck on Riven, with no way back and no conceivable way to complete your objectives since you are missing one of the 2 tools given to you by Atris. It is here we are then given full freedom of movement to explore Riven. Stepping out of the small cell, you find yourself on an island with a large golden dome and some strange contraption in front of you. I suppose it's only fitting to talk about each island of Riven. I won't be giving away any puzzle solutions, but a brief overview like this might contain some hints, so be warned. As we talked before, Riven was once a large island, but due to its instability, it has since broken into 5 smaller islands. When we first link to Riven, we find ourselves on what is commonly referred to as Temple Island or Dome Island. The Rivenese call it Alatuan, named after the Temple of Gehn on the island's east side. When we first start on the island, we see a strange device mounted to slabs of iron that are embedded in the ground. The device has a view lens, but is obstructed by a hatch with a combination lock. At the end of the iron slabs, we see a large dagger that resembles the one used by the Moieti. This area is the place where the confrontation between Atris and Gehn occurred. To go back a step, when Catherine was enacting her backup plan, her and Anna made a few subtle changes to the Riven descriptive book. Atris was not aware of these. Those changes are what caused the fissures to open, as well as created the large daggers that fell from the sky and pierced the earth. The large dagger we see here split the earth and opened the star fissure, the anomaly that is sealed beneath the iron slabs. We'll talk a little bit more about the star fissure towards the end. When Riven split into the separate islands, Gehn restricted 4 of the islands to his personal use, as well as his private personnel. The Rivenese were given 1 island to use for themselves, and were allowed to travel to the temple to give offerings and to listen to messages from Gehn delivered via Imager. A doorway is hidden in the wall, which allows Gehn access to the rest of the island that holds the gate room, as well as the Great Golden Dome. Since the gate room is somewhat hidden, we can assume it was only used by specific people. Once again, we see the symbolism of 5, as this room is in the shape of a pentagon. On each point of the pentagon are pillars adorned with effigies of the scarab beetles that we see elsewhere in the age. Each beetle can be operated to allow the person to look through a lens which reveals a mural to Gehn. Each mural is an aspect of Gen's domain on Riven. If you own the physical copy of the game, the covers of each of the 5 discs has one of the 5 murals on it as well. On 3 of the walls of the gate room, we see Dunny inscriptions. These inscriptions lead us to believe that this room may have been used as a smaller place of worship before the actual temple was completed, or potentially as an antechamber for only the highest of Gen's personnel. One last thought is this room could act as a mural or shrine to Gehn, built and inscribed as an offering, and not for use by the Rivenese people, but instead for use only by Gehn. Personally, I think it is the last one, since the room is not just for looks, but it functions as well. I'll get to that a little bit later. Nonetheless, these inscriptions can be translated as prayers, and they read, "The prayer of books.
Our Lord Gehn has blessed us by giving to us the procedure to make the books. We thank our Lord for the privilege of producing the books he needs.
The prayer of the ink.
Our Lord Gehn has blessed us by giving to us the formula to make the ink. We thank our Lord for the opportunity of producing the ink he needs.
The prayer of our Master.
Our Lord Gehn has blessed us by his presence. We dedicate our existence to our Master Gehn, the creator and protector of our world. Praise Gehn, the maker of worlds."
As stated before, this room is not just for looks. It is also a puzzle to keep people out of the Great Golden Dome, which lies right behind a closed gate. Opening that gate allows us access to the main power room that I mentioned earlier, which allowed Gehn to use the linking books he made in Riven after his exile. On the top floor, secured between the 2 hemispheres of the dome, is the power mechanism. Without revealing the solution, the marbles are used here to complete a circuit of sorts that sends the energy of the fire marbles into a boiler-like mechanism that is then directed to the linking books secured within the smaller domes around Riven. Close to the Great Golden Dome is one of the smaller domes that contains a linking book to Age 233, as well as a pathway that connects to one of the other islands. From the main entrance of Gen's temple, we travel to what is commonly called Jungle Island, or Village Island to some. The island is surrounded on all sides by high cliffs, which form a crater towards the middle. The crater has filled with water to form a lake, above which the surviving Rivenese people live, in a somewhat primitive village. The village is comprised of spherical mud dwellings held high above the water with wooden support structures. Wooden pathways and ladders are built to connect these dwellings. Within the lake itself is a tram system of sorts. It utilizes rails to guide the airtight craft to different locations within the crater. At each of these locations, the water parts to allow people to embark and disembark the craft. This parting of water is a phenomenon within Riven, and will be talked about a bit later. Each point where the tram stops is controlled within the craft itself. However, at points where one would disembark, a ladder is normally used. These ladders are controlled in a central room on the opposite side of the crater from the village. Gehn, of course, keeps his subjects in line through control. He controls every aspect of their lives, from where they can go to what they can do when they get there. One place he allows them access to on this island is a small school. It is here we see that Gehn has been teaching the Rivenese the Dunny language, as well as its numbering system. As Gehn cannot be bothered to travel there himself, he has set up an imager, much like the one in the temple, to deliver his lessons. There are 2 chalkboards in this classroom, one of which has written the rules of Gehn, which children are expected to memorize and recite by heart. Those rules are: Gehn is our master, Gehn created us, and Gehn defeated Atris. This school shows how busy Gehn has been in his exile, and that he has not changed his path on rebuilding the Dunny at any time in the past 33 years. Lastly, in the crater we see a large structure suspended over the water. This structure is the main means of capital punishment for anyone who steps out of line. The sentence is suspended from their ankles and dangled upside down over the water. Gehn uses this method to feed the criminal who is still alive to an animal known as the wark, which he has captured as a pet. We see the symbolism of the wark all over Riven, from Genn's temple to a large idol found within the trees on the jungle island. He even uses the skulls of dead warks to adorn the gallows itself. Gehn uses this imagery to instill fear within the Rivenese people and maintain control over anyone who dares oppose him. Next to the wark gallows, carved into the rock, is a prison cell. And guess what? If you're going to say, he's probably going to come back to that prison later, you're absolutely right. Of course, this island is not called Jungle Island for no reason. On the way to the village, we pass by an area that was clear-cut of trees. Among the stumps, we find a minecart device that travels underground to another island. This cart is used to transport wood to the next step in the bookmaking process. Not all trees were removed from the area. Off to the side we can see an area of thick jungle which contains another small golden dome protecting a linking book. I don't think the Rivenese were allowed in this area, as there are doors blocking entry, however, they're not locked. The fear of Genn's wrath more than likely kept people out of there. This area also holds a wark idol mentioned earlier. This idol is a hidden entrance to an elevator that Gehn would use to travel to another island, as well as his viewing platform for executions. Speaking of other islands, remember the cart we briefly mentioned from the previous island? Well, that cart ends up here, on the so aptly named Book Assembly Island. Others refer to this island commonly as Crater Island or Boiler Island as well. This island serves one main purpose, for the creation of both linking and descriptive books. Since bookmaking is no easy feat, we know that Gehn formed a guild of bookmakers and served as their guildmaster. We know from history that before the Midiz War, Gehn was an apprentice in the Bookmakers Guild back in Dunny. The limited knowledge he obtained from his experience in the guild was used in the attempt to create his own linking books from scratch during this exile. This is the main reason why his books failed without mechanical assistance. The island itself is pretty straightforward. It's dominated by the volcanic crater, which has since turned into a lake with opaque turquoise waters. In the center of the lake, Gehn had a pump installed to harness the underground steam from the volcanic activity and use its power towards one of the 3 devices found there. One of those devices is the large boiler seen next to the lake. This boiler would be filled with wood shavings from the nearby chipper. Water would then be added and then heated to boiling to remove fibers from the wood, after which the wet pulp would then be pressed into paper. Due to Genn's lack of complete knowledge on bookmaking, he set up a lab on the outer edge of the crater's lip. It is connected to the boiler area via a hidden entrance in the cliffside. That hidden door reveals to us another small golden dome, as well as a winch system containing an animal trap. This trap was used to capture a species of frog found deep in the subterranean ecosystem of Riven. These frogs can be harvested for their chemicals. Primarily, Gehn used the frogs to make extracts to smoke in his pipe. At the same time, the Moieti extracted poison from the same species for their darts, which we may have seen used on Cho at the beginning of the game. Finally, on this island we have two methods of transport. One is a very long pathway built between this island and the Great Golden Dome. The other is another tram which leads to our next island, which is... Survey Island is also known as Spike Island, Plateau Island, or sometimes Garden Island. It is said that Gehn used this island specifically to study the deterioration of the Fifth Age. It is unknown if Gehn was aware of Atris's changes to help stabilize Riven or not. The island may have also served as a ceremonial role, as Gehn had it surrounded with wark tusks, although this may have been done more for a defensive purpose. I have heard a few people refer to this place as Fortress Island, which seems fitting due to the large rock spikes that surround the main structure. These spikes would potentially make it safe refuge from the Moieti, or it could be used as a panic room of sorts. The main structure houses a map room, as well as a small golden dome, which is accessed by a small elevator. The map room uses a spike matrix to display the selected island, and shows the elevation and lay of the island itself. This tool was used by the Survey Guild to assess and implement the golden domes in specific locations on the island. Across from the map room is a balcony, which oversees metallic structures that represent the 5 islands of Riven with their layout, as well as their proximity to each other. These structures have raised rims which allow them to hold water on their topmost face. With this, Gehn had fitted each metal structure with heating elements. When turned on, this will cause the Rivenese water to react and form an elevation map on each island. This island also contains an underwater observatory room. Stairs lead up to a throne where Gehn could sit and spy on other places around Riven. One place we see here is the village from the Jungle Island. It was not mentioned earlier, but in the center of the lake, back at the Rivenese village, is a structure with a rotating lens. This lens is what we control from this machine. The other observation point is somewhere we have not been yet, but when viewed, we see the person we are here to rescue, Catherine. Actually, that's a perfect segue into the final island. Separated from the other 4 islands and not accessible by normal means sits Prison Island, the smallest island on Riven. This island once held the Great Tree, which was cut down by Gehn after his exile to create paper for linking books. Initially, Gehn used this island and the structure built here as his private office. Of course, once Catherine was captured, this island serves as her prison. Once Gehn had discovered a way to use his broken linking books with mechanical assistance, he built a small golden dome just off the shore of Prison Island. That way only himself, as well as anyone he selected, could travel to the island quickly and discreetly. There is no information as to how this island was accessed before H-233 became operational, but it is speculated that a boat was used originally. There's not much to talk about when it comes to Prison Island. However, the person we see and meet here is of exceptional importance to the story. I guess it's only fitting to talk about her, but before I do, I need to come back to a subject I've been holding off on until now: transportation. Between 4 of the 5 islands, Gehn had maglev trams built. These are self-explained for the most part, as using magnetics to levitate a craft and guide it with rails. As mentioned earlier, the maglev uses a Riven phenomenon to help with momentum, and that is the Riven water. If you have ever been on a roller coaster, you know that it uses hills to regulate speed. The maglev train uses that as well, but at certain points, it requires the tram to plunge so deep that it would sink into the waters between the islands. At these points, the Guild of Builders constructed a ring with heating elements in it. When heat is applied to the water on Riven, it moves as far as it can away from the heat source, creating a void big enough for the tram to pass through unscathed. When Gehn first witnessed this phenomenon, he took time to study it. Gehn speculated that within the Rivenese water lived a type of bacteria or other unicellular organism. This organism has special structural properties that give it the capability to hold bits of water. Due to their sensitivity to heat, they move away and pull any surrounding water with them. Unfortunately, Gehn never finished his experiments on Rivenese water due to the more pressing matters he had, so this theory cannot be confirmed. I want to say a quick sorry because I didn't really know where else to talk about that. Now that we got it out of the way, I guess we can continue with the explanation and talk about the reason why we were here in the first place. From the events of Myst, we know that Cirrus and Agonar lied to Catherine to get her out of the picture. The brothers told her that Atris had returned to Riven and requested that she go there as soon as possible. The brothers knew that Riven was forbidden territory, as well as a one-way mode of transport. Catherine believed their lies and linked to Riven, without fact-checking any of their story. When she arrived, her fate was similar to ours. As I said before, Gehn had expected Atris to someday return, but instead it was Catherine who was captured. Unlike our arrival though, she was shot with a drugged dart. As she lay there not fully aware of what was happening, a Rivenese man wearing the traditional Dunny attire approached, and he demanded the linking book. Catherine had not taken one with, as she believed that Atris would have his own. As Cho continued to question her, he was shot with a drugged dart as well. This one from the Moiety. That's right, not only was Cho thwarted when Catherine arrived, but it happened again when we arrived as well. Gehn should have picked a better guard. Poor Cho. Anyways, the Moiety rescued Catherine and took her away to a secret location. She explained to them, as they sat gathered around, the battle between Atris, herself, and Gehn at the edge of the star fissure. In this retelling, she used exaggerations to further solidify that Gehn was no god, and instill hope and courage against him. The Moiety operated as a hidden rebellion in opposition to Gehn and his rule. This retelling further solidified and instilled a renewed fervor within the group. She learned through the interaction that the Moiety considered her a messianic figure, one who would save the Rivenese from destruction. In the coming days, she would venture out with some of the Moiety scouts to survey what Riven had become. Catherine was devastated by what she saw. She found the star fissure and learned that the Moiety had acquired the combination to its viewport and had plans to open it. She instructed them to stay away from it, fearing the damage it would cause to the already decaying age. Over time, as she continued to communicate with both the Moiety and the Riven villagers, she hears the news that Gehn managed to create a stable link to a new age, and that he required the assistance of technology to achieve this. At some point, Catherine was given a burnt book, one of Gen's failed experiments, which the Moiety had salvaged from his lab on Crater Island. She found it unsuitable in its current state and began to modify it. She instructed a group of Moiety to discover the combination to the small golden domes that Gehn had constructed to power Age 233. This would give her access to use the modified age she wrote from Gen's failure. The Moiety succeeded in finding not only a combination, but they were also able to steal a Riven return linking book that Gehn used to move between the two ages. Even though they had the combination, Catherine still did not know how Gehn was able to power the linking books. So she decided to utilize the new Moiety age she fixed. In order to do so, she would need to get her linking book functional. She had a small group of Moiety sent to scout out Gen's movements. When Gehn went to power the small domes, she would access one of them and use its power to allow her to link to the Moiety age she had written. Once she arrived, Catherine would have to find and harvest crystals she had written into the age, and refine them to create a book window that would heal linking panels and make them usable. Without this window, she would be stuck there forever, as the Riven linking book had the same flaws as Gen's other created books. Using this new technology, she was able to access the Moiety age freely and create additional book windows for whatever needs she and the Moiety had. Soon Catherine was able to lead the Moiety to the new age, which we'll now know is called Tay. Even though the Moiety were safe in their new age, Catherine still worried they would be discovered by Gehn. She planned on destroying the Tay linking book, so Gehn would have no way of reaching them. Before she destroyed the book, she returned to the Rivenese village to try to persuade the remaining Rivenese to join her. Some of Gen's men arrived and took Catherine into custody, 2 of which were killed in the process. Catherine was then taken to Prison Island and was interrogated by Gehn. He attempted to understand her reason for returning to Riven, but she was defiant in her responses and refused to speak in any other language than Rivenese. Nonetheless, Gehn came to the conclusion that her returning to Riven was an accident, and that she had no method of returning to where she came. Catherine was kept at Prison Island with no means of escape. She was brought food and water daily by a Riven woman named Nila. Unbeknownst to Gehn, Nila was part of the Moiety, and an old friend of Catherine. When the stranger links to Riven, Nila hears of his arrival from the Moiety. She brings this news to Catherine, as well as news of books that the Moiety agent had taken from Cho. Catherine understood that this was someone sent by Atris, and knew that the book that was taken was a prison book written to capture Gehn. She instructed Nila to return it to him, as well as a journal and a note which she had written. She knew that Gehn kept the combination to her cell in his quarters on Age 233. and that once he was imprisoned, she could finish rescuing the Rivenese people to Tay, as well as signal Atris using the Star Fissure. It is here where we move to our next segment. To avoid puzzle solutions, I will fast forward a bit. The stranger has explored Riven at this time, and has already spoken to Gehn in age 233, as well as Catherine. In doing so, we have discovered a series of clues that appears to be tied to the Moiety. We return to the small prison on Jungle Island and find a hidden passageway. This leads us to a room where the Moiety has set up its final line of defense against Gehn. Here, we find the linking book to Tay, complete with a book window created by Catherine. The link is stable, and we see through the panel a large crater, with a tree-like structure in the middle. Windows can be seen scattered on the surface of this structure, and so we place our hand on the panel and link to the Moiety Age. When we arrive, we find no means of crossing the crater's lake that surrounds the large structure. Behind us is an effigy of Gehn, tucked into a small cave. This effigy has been stabbed multiple times with Rivenese daggers. As a side note, I mentioned these Rivenese daggers a few times earlier, but never explained that the Moiety adopted their shape as their sacred symbol. The daggers represented their doctrine and what they stood for. Anyways, the effigy holds a return linking book to Riven as well. On that book is another book window. As we enter the cave, we are ambushed by 2 Moiety guards and shot with a knockout dart. I guess now we know what it feels like to be Cho. The guards bring us to the large tree-like structure and lock us in a room. It is here that we receive the journal from Catherine, as well as our stolen prison book from Neela. She leaves and returns a short time later with a return linking book to Riven that allows us to escape from our prison. It is clear what we must do, and armed with our new knowledge and trap book, we go to confront Gehn on age 233. Before I get started with the final confrontation, allow me to explain a bit of lore about age 233. We know that after many failed attempts to make a working linking book, Gehn finally succeeded by using fire marbles to generate power in order to hold a descriptive book within a stable matrix. However, the age he created was far from perfect. It is unknown if the age was written on purpose in this way, or if it's a result of poor writing. One imperfection of age 233 is the environment, which proved to be toxic. When Gehn brought his team of Rivenese workers to build his office, the construction was both slow and difficult, and resulted in the workers going blind due to this toxicity. To combat that effect, Gehn repaired and modified his gear to allow him to work there. Looking at the age, we see many strange rock formations that appear out of place. We can make a guess that at some point age 233's water levels were much higher, eventually receding, which is what leaves us with what we see now. Rainfall in the region is very sparse. This could be one major cause for the water's receding, but we won't know. Due to the lack of rain, Gehn had to build a giant dish on top of his office to collect what little rain did fall. The office that Gehn had constructed was built as another measure of security. Paranoid of Atris's return, he had a cage built at the Age's link endpoint. This cage allowed a person access to the other small golden domes on Riven, but not access to anywhere in Genn's office. An alarm was also installed, so if someone linked in, they could signal Gehn of their arrival. Speaking of arrivals, it's time to talk about the final confrontation. For this segment, I need to rewind a bit. Back to when the stranger first links to age 233. Upon arriving, we are met with the cage that is described earlier. Genn's office is empty save for 5 linking books, each of which link back to an island on Riven, as well as various machines and bits around the room. Inside the cage is a button that is used to signal your arrival. Pressing it calls Gehn away from his work, and he returns to his office to greet you. On first encounter, he seems nothing like what we have heard or seen of him. He is a wiry old man, yet he holds himself upright with an air of defiance and dignity. He apologizes for the cage and explains that it is necessary due to the situation he finds himself in, referring to the Moiety and those who despise him. Gehn attempts to paint a picture of himself different than what we have come to see him as. He seems reformed from his godlike tyrannical nature. However, we know that looks can be deceiving. Gehn continues to speak and attempts to persuade the stranger that Atris is the evil of the two. He blames Atris for the hard life that the Rivenese have had to endure for these past 30 years. He blames the decay of Riven on Atris as well, and tells us that Riven has entered its final days. Soon it will collapse, and all within it will be destroyed. He then dangles information in front of the stranger about Catherine, telling us that she has gone mad, which resulted in her being removed from her people. He demands that no attempt should be made to free her. Although Gehn is fully aware of your mission on Riven, he acts as if he trusts you. He then reveals that he is fully aware of the book that was stolen from us at the beginning of the game by the Moieti. Gehn asks that if the book is recovered from them, that it be immediately returned to him. As a sign of good faith, he allows full access to Riven by engaging a power source found in his office. The surrounding Riven linking books come to life when the power is turned on. This technology is the same used back on Riven, but in a much smaller scale. Gehn then leaves, knowing full well that he has set you up to recover the book. You may not realize it, but he is fully manipulating you to recover that book. He instructed you not to attempt to free Catherine, but at the same time, gives you access to her on Prison Island. It turns out, he's still the same cunning man that we came to know in the Book of Atris. After the stranger visits the aforementioned Age of Tay, he then returns to Age 233 to complete his first task. Gehn is waiting for him, having heard news of the stranger's success. Catherine was right. Gehn was watching every move you made. He takes the book from you and spends a moment examining it, looking at the writing that Atris has done to see if the book is real or not. Of course, Gehn is no fool, and instead of linking right away, he presents the book to the stranger to be the first to return.
Perhaps it would be best if you went through first.
Just in case a trap has been set for the first person who uses it. Of course, we are left no choice and reluctantly link into the prison book. Uh-oh, I don't feel good about this. As we stand there in the endless void, we see Gehn through the linking panel, much like how Cirrus and Agonar saw us on Myst. I'm stuck in a book now. Gehn is geared up once again and is armed with his gun. Seeing that you have successfully linked, he places his hand on the panel. This causes the two of you to switch places, as the prison book is only meant to hold one person. Mission success. Gehn is no longer a threat to Riven and its people, and we now have free access to the rest of his office on Age 233. I won't go into detail how it is done, but by exploring a bit more, the stranger finds the combination to Catherine's prison. Using it allows her to escape, and she goes off to get the remaining Rivenese to Tay. She knows as well as Gehn did that Riven is in its final days. The final thing left to do is to signal Atris somehow. We know this is done by breaking open the seal to the star fissure, as the Moieti intended to do earlier. Doing so sets in motion the final moments of Riven. Atris sees what is happening, and immediately knows this is a signal for him to enter. He links to Riven to find the sky has become black and the earth shaking. Catherine has had enough time to move the remaining Rivenese to Tay, and they meet at the fissure. They embrace each other as they do so. Atris thanks you for your help, and holds a linking book for Catherine to return home with. He then recreates the moment from the Book of Atris, as he holds his book over the star fissure and links home, causing the book to fall into the expanse. As it does, a major tremor shakes the land, and the stranger is thrown into the void, falling into the starry expanse. That was Riven. Who would have known that there was so much lore in such an old game? If you have watched this far, I want to say thank you. This project has been in the works for well over a month. I want to thank everyone who helped and participated, especially to the crew and talent who made the live action a success, voice actors, and Redditors as well, who contributed their knowledge to the lore. For those wondering when the next video is coming out, it probably won't be until next year. We decided as a team to take a break from the Myst game explanations and work on other games for winter. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see more. Give us your feedback. As always, we'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye-bye.